I don't know if anyone's going to believe me, but I swear what I'm about to tell you happened exactly the way I remember it. It didn't start with anything crazy, no horror movie kind of opening. It was just a normal night. And maybe that's why it still messes with me, because everything felt so ordinary right before things got strange. I was staying at my cousin's old house for a few weeks during the summer. He'd moved into this place after college, an older rental tucked away at the edge of a wooded road. It wasn't one of those spooky, broken-down houses you see in movies. It looked perfectly normal. Beige siding, a small porch, a couple of creaky steps. Inside, it smelled like carpet cleaner and a little bit of paint, like it had been fixed up just enough to rent out. Nothing about it screamed haunted or cursed. The first couple of nights were uneventful. I spent most of my time in the small spare room upstairs where I'd set up my things. The room had one window that looked out toward the trees, and at night the woods turned into a solid black wall. No streetlights, no houses across the road, just trees swallowing everything up. I'd usually leave the blinds halfway down, just enough so I could see a little bit of the sky when I lay in bed. It was the third night that I started noticing small things. At first, I brushed them off. You know how an old house has its own language? Wood expanding, floors popping, the refrigerator kicking on. That's what I told myself. Around midnight, I'd hear a faint creak somewhere down the hallway. Then a soft thump, almost like a door moving slightly. The first time, I actually got up, thinking maybe my cousin had come home late, but the whole house was empty except for me. I even checked the front door, which was still locked. The next night it was the same thing, creaks, tiny thuds, and what I swear sounded like a soft shuffle of footsteps on the stairs. Not heavy enough to sound like someone walking normally, but not light enough to be nothing. It was that in-between sound that gets under your skin because you can't quite name it. I froze in bed, straining to listen. The sound stopped the moment I sat up. I tried to laugh it off the next morning, telling myself it was probably raccoons outside, or maybe even the plumbing. But the house didn't have pipes that ran near my room, and the window was shut tight. My cousin joked when I mentioned it. He said the house was old and probably settling. I wanted to believe that, but something about it didn't feel right. By the end of the week, I'd started to dread bedtime. Every night, as soon as the house got quiet, the noises would begin. This time, it wasn't just footsteps. I started hearing whispers, faint, like someone speaking in the next room with the door almost closed. I'd lie perfectly still, holding my breath, trying to make out words, but they never sounded clear. Just murmurs, slipping in and out like a bad radio signal. Sometimes I'd convince myself it was the wind coming through the trees, but the whispers always seemed to be inside, not outside. One night I decided to test it. I left the hall light on, cracked my door open, and sat awake with a glass of water on my nightstand. Around 2 a.m, the floor creaked just outside my room. My heart started pounding. I told myself it was nothing, but the next sound shattered that hope. The unmistakable slow turn of the doorknob on the spare room. It didn't open, not all the way, but I heard it click softly like someone had tried it and then let go. I sat frozen for what felt like hours. When I finally got up enough courage to peek out, the hall was empty. Light still glowing, nothing out of place. The following day, I avoided the house as much as I could, hanging around town until late evening. But no matter how long I stayed away, eventually I had to go back. That night it got worse. I'd barely turned out the light when I heard a scraping sound at my window. Not scratching, not tapping, scraping, like something dragging across the glass. I snapped my eyes open, but the blinds were down. My chest tightened as I listened to it slide slowly back and forth, right against the glass pane. I wanted to pull the blinds open, to prove to myself it was just a branch or something blowing in the wind, but I couldn't move. My whole body refused. The scraping stopped after maybe a minute, but I stayed awake until the sun came up, staring at that window like it was alive. When I finally checked in daylight, there was nothing there. No tree close enough to touch the window. No marks on the glass. The nights blurred together after that, but the sense of being watched never left me. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night with a strange, heavy feeling that someone was standing right at the end of my bed. I'd flick the lamp on instantly, but of course the room was empty. Still, the feeling would linger, like I'd only just missed catching whoever or whatever it was. It was subtle, but something about the air in that room changed. During the day, it felt normal enough, but as soon as the sun set, the air grew heavier, almost charged. I'd find myself holding my breath without even realizing it, like my body already knew what was coming. I kept telling myself it was stress, or maybe I was just overtired. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just in my head. Something was off in that house, something I couldn't explain. And every night, it was creeping closer to me. Like and subscribe more horror stories. I stayed up the entire night after that last incident, sitting in the spare room chair instead of lying down. I had this dumb idea that if I stayed awake with the light on, nothing could happen. By sunrise, my eyes felt like sandpaper, but I was still alive and nothing had moved. For a few hours, I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it all, but as soon as night came again, everything changed. The house felt different the moment the sun dipped below the trees. Even the air smelled faintly metallic like old coins. I shut the blinds completely, locked my door, and tried to distract myself with my phone. The battery was low, but I figured I'd only need a little light until I fell asleep. I don't know how long I'd been lying there when I noticed it. Not the sounds this time, something else. The glass of water I'd left on the nightstand earlier wasn't there anymore. I blinked, sat up and stared at the empty space where it should have been. It wasn't on the floor, it wasn't tipped over, it was just gone. I tried not to panic. Maybe I'd moved it and forgotten. But then, from the far corner of the room, I heard a tiny clink, like glass tapping against wood. My head snapped toward the sound. In the faint glow from my phone, I could just make out the silhouette of the glass sitting on the dresser across the room. I hadn't moved it. My breath went shallow. My first instinct was to grab my bag and run, but my legs felt rooted. I whispered to myself, "This isn't real, it's just stress." But even my voice sounded wrong in the room, thin and shaky. Then came the footsteps again, not on the stairs this time. Inside my room, soft, deliberate steps, like bare feet on carpet, moving slowly from the dresser toward the bed. The air turned icy. I could see my breath puff out in the dim light. I scrambled for my phone to turn on the flashlight, but the screen went black. Dead. My charger had been unplugged from the wall. I didn't do that either. I pressed my back to the headboard, heart hammering. In the darkness, I heard the faintest whisper. This time it was close enough to make out. A woman's voice, low and almost gentle. "Don't look." My skin went cold. I squeezed my eyes shut, but the urge to open them was overwhelming. Every hair on my body stood on end. I don't know how long I sat there trembling before the air shifted again. Warmer now, normal. When I finally cracked one eye open, the room was empty. The glass of water was back on the nightstand. I didn't sleep at all. The next day, I tried calling my cousin to come home early from work. He didn't pick up. I packed my bag and waited by the front door until it got dark. But somehow, I couldn't leave. It's like my body kept telling me I had to stay, like walking out would make things worse. That night, I decided to leave the hall light off. Maybe, I thought, if the house thinks I'm asleep, nothing will happen. I lay down fully dressed, my keys in one hand. At exactly 3:12 a.m., I know because I checked the clock, I woke up to the sound of the front door opening downstairs. Not creaking, not the usual house noises. The door opening. A heavy, deliberate click. Then slow, steady footsteps on the hardwood. I grabbed my phone, but it was dead again. My throat closed up as I listened to the steps cross the living room, then start up the stairs. One by one, slow, heavy. I don't know what made me do it, but I slid off the bed and crouched behind it, pressing myself to the floor. My heart pounded so loud I was sure it could hear me. The steps reached the top of the stairs and stopped right outside my door. The knob turned. Not testing this time, turning all the way. The door opened with a soft squeal. Through the crack at the bottom of the bed, I saw two bare feet step onto the carpet. Pale, motionless. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. My whole body shook as I tried not to breathe. The feet stood there for what felt like minutes. Then they started moving again, slow and deliberate, circling the bed. I could hear breathing now, not mine. Heavy, uneven breathing, like someone trying to hold in a laugh. Then, just as it reached my side of the bed, the breathing stopped. The feet stopped. Silence. A whisper slid into my ear, closer than any voice had ever been. "You shouldn't have stayed." Something ice-cold brushed the back of my neck. I jerked up instinctively, but the room was empty. Door shut, no one there, I didn't sleep. I don't even remember grabbing my bag. But by dawn, I was outside on the porch, shaking, my cousin's keys still clutched in my hand. I left that morning and never went back. To this day, I don't know what was in that house. I don't know why it only came at night, why it moved my things, why it whispered to me like it knew my name. I tell myself it was stress or dreams, or some trick of my mind. But then I remember those footsteps, the voice in my ear, and the way the air turned cold right before it touched me. That was years ago. And I still wake up at 3:12 a.m. sometimes, heart pounding, sure that if I open my eyes, I'll see those pale feet standing at the end of my bed again. Like and subscribe. If you've ever had something happen you can't explain, because I still don't have answers for what happened in that house. And maybe I never will.